In 1985, he took a position as associate professor in the Western Oregon University, where he directed the Assistive Communication Device Project, which provided continuing education opportunities for hearing healthcare professionals throughout Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Washington. And in '89, he developed the Audiology program at Good Samaritan Hospital in Corvallis, and he took the position on the faculty at Oregon State University. And he taught there another 17 years. I believe if you really kind of scratch the surface, you would find beaver there. I'm pretty sure of that. So, and that's not in any way, if you don't know, beaver is the mascot of Oregon State. Okay, I don't want to go anywhere else with this, okay? In 1989, Dr. Leavitt founded the Oregon Association for Better Hearing. It is the U.S.'s largest consumer test group for hearing aid users, which continues to educate hundreds of people with education loss throughout the Willamette Valley annually. Now, the nice thing about that is, this is where research meets reality. Doing research isolated in a lab is great and it's wonderful to do, but until you apply those things with real-world situations, with real-world people, you're never going to really see how to make the connections there. He is currently the director of audiology at Corvallis Hearing Center, where he continues to do clinical research work. He's been awarded a few things here. Number one, the Corvallis Hearing Center has been awarded the best hearing healthcare providers in 2011, 2012, 2013. A lot of pressure on to keep that going for this year. He won Best Audiologist in the Western U.S. in 2012. Take that. Man. And his research in hearing aid programming was identified as the best hearing aid research for 2012 by the American Academy of Audiology. Also, this year he was, in 2013, he was recognized by AudioScan and the winner of the Hearing Aid Fitting Challenge. Now, throughout his career, he's been an avid researcher, writer, clinician, advocate in the community-based hearing-based education. And in just chatting with him for only just a few minutes, I always ask one question every winter is, how did you get into the field of audiology? You know what the number one answer is with most audiologists? It was kind of an accident. I kind of fell into it. And, you know, there wasn't like, I'm going to school to become an audiologist. That rarely happened back in the day. But he had the other popular answer, and the other answer you hear a lot, is he had experience with people who were hearing impaired, including his family. He shared with me that both his mother and father were avid trap shooters. His mother was inducted into the Trap Shooter Hall of Fame and never wore any hearing protection while doing that. He has a passion for music. His wife and him are in a band where they play every sort of, I believe, I heard everything from country and western to Irish to gospel if necessary. Wherever they can get the gig, they can do it, so, which is awesome. He started his career with a trumpet, but now plays the mandolin. And the one last thing I'll share about before inviting him up here is that in his 8th grade science project, he made a trumpet. That was his project. And I couldn't tell you all that's involved, but it involves some copper tubing and tuna cans. But other than that, it worked. And so that passion comes his entire life. With that, it's my honor to recognize Dr. Ron Leavitt as this year's winner of the Larry Mauldin Award. He's coming up to the stage, I'm just going to read what it says. Larry Mauldin Award for Excellence in Education in the Hearing Healthcare Profession. And it's in recognition of Ron Leavitt, AUD, for exemplifying the highest standards and commitment to the hearing care professionals, for pioneering new ideas and expanding the horizons of hearing care professionals, and for pursuing the dreams that change people's lives. Also got a chance to meet some students who are going into audiology that he had a direct reason for getting them into this business. So they'll either never forgive you or thank you for the rest of your life. This, and then you have what to do. Quick shot here. What is your second?
Well, I thank you all for this honor, and what an honor it is to be considered with the great people who have come before me. I was looking at some of the names of the people who were the great teachers and recognized by this award, and I'm humbled to be in their presence, including my friend Joe Mauldin, sitting over there at my table, a friend of Foucault these many years. The profession of audiology changes so rapidly these days. I think it's somewhat dangerous to look back on what you've done, your life's work. But indulge me for just a couple of minutes, because I'm going to do a little of that now, but we all need to keep in mind that if you do too much, tomorrow passes you by very easily. So this is a sort of a rare opportunity. The reason I'm where I am and do the things I do are because of my teachers. And they are every day a part of me. There's hardly a day that goes by that I don't quote something they've said. And I'd like to just mention a few of them because my mentors are many. I made a list so I wouldn't forget. But as I look at this list, it's really quite amazing how many there are. Starting with William Hodson, my main advisor, who let me as a young graduate student put a chapter in his book that did very well and sort of made a name for me before I ever expected to have a name made. Sergei Kochkin, who's taught us all so much about what people think about their hearing aids, information we would never have had before. We have important conversations often, he and I, strangely in the men's restroom. I seem to run into him there a lot. I'm not sure it's because we both drink too much or just what it is that gets us there together all the time. But many of the great things I've learned about what people think about their hearing aids were with Sergei Kochkin in a men's restroom. I'm sure he would enjoy me telling that story too. So if I see him, be sure to mention that. James Jerger, who regardless of how well known he is, always seems to have time to answer whatever crazy question I have, and will even, if I say, you know, this thing you've printed here looks like a buffalo, he'll start using it too, and he'll say, well, you know, the buffalo versus the vulture, and all of my mentors took that kind of time with me to answer questions that, to me, sometimes, especially in retrospect, seem a little silly. Wayne Olson and Noel Matkin. I'm sort of going through the honors list of Northwestern University in the Raymond Carhart era, who I never had the pleasure of knowing except through his students. Meade Killian and Sam Leibarger, who taught me everything I needed to know about ear molds and ear mold acoustics. Ruth Bentler and Robin Cox, whose tireless efforts to find the truth in a very complex, ever-changing world has guided me much. Gus Mueller, who's perhaps the most entertaining and one of the best presenters you'll ever hope to hear. Ted Glackey, who was tirelessly trying to teach me electrophysiological science. Frank Lynn, who brings us surprises every year about the true effects of hearing loss. Paul Skinner, who found money for me to go to school and allowed me to quit being an underground miner in San Manuel, Arizona, and become a professional. I greatly appreciated that. Ralph Shelton, who said, the cookbook approaches you're learning when you graduate here will be obsolete the day you leave. Richard Curley, who said, you know, you've got to learn what to do with your hands when you're presenting. Until you do, just sit on them when you're talking. Wayne Staub, who used to say things that sounded so outlandish that now are part of our routine practice. Fred Bess, who taught us so much about minimal hearing loss when we all thought it was something that could be solved with preferential seating. Tom Hickson, who was a great bowler and golfer friend of mine, as well as a great scientist. Mark Ross, who even now in his 80s is still contributing to this profession. Bill Cole, who again is always willing to give me things that you really think you should charge for, but always seems to give it to us for free, and this is greatly appreciated. Michael Valente, who spends his lunch hours many times talking to me rather than eating, and Catherine Palmer, who has been tireless advocate for best practices in the profession of audiology. And then, of course, my brothers in arms who sit here. My wife, Kim, my mother, Nikki, and Colette, who on a daily basis make my life easier, and Joe Mauldin. How can we forget him, who is always there when I need a friend. So, in closing, I'd just like to say something that Aristotle once said about his teachers. He said, "If I've seen further than the rest, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants." And tonight, I get a chance to look back at my giants. So thank you for this. I'm very honored and pleased to be here. So let's party.
Thank you, Ron, and honestly, that list you just read off is a who's who of our profession, which is remarkable and makes me even more jealous now because you have to work with a lot of great people. But with that said, in closing the official part of this, probably the best aspect of Larry Mauldin and what he brought to it was that he really believed in the idea that learning takes place anywhere, but especially in bars. And so it's with that I invite you to enjoy the food and drink for the evening and the camaraderie of everybody else that's here this evening. We have a photographer here. If you'd like to get some pictures taken, he's the guy who's this is Charles over here, he's gonna move you around into positions and make you officially look good. That's his job. So if he asks you to stand in for a minute, please accommodate him. Enjoy yourselves for the rest of the evening. Have some food, have some drink. Thank you again, everybody.